Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Today we are looking at the SDF1. So we are getting into Robotech for the week. We have a couple here. This comes to us from rpggamer.org. I do want to do a shout out to them because I do not know exactly who it was that had put all of these stats together. And, it's Christmas week here. We're going to kind of go through some of the SDF1 and Robotech that we have on rpggamer.org. Just kind of changing the format for a week, just having a little extra fun. And here we go. So, first and foremost, I think most of us that are looking at this really do know what Robotech or uh, Macross is about. But for those that do not, so Robotech or Macross, depending on if you're watching the original Japanese version or the American version. That's where the difference really kind of comes into uh, things, and there are slight differences between the two. So hopefully this kind of helps us either way. The SDF 1 is the masterpiece of the Robotech master Zor. He launched the ship to Earth before he himself was killed by his fellow Robotech masters. The ship crashed on Earth and was heavily damaged. After 10 long years, the human race rebuilt as much as possible and made great leaps in technological advancement, in the process creating the many styles of Veritech fighter jets and destroyed mecha, as well as discovering protoculture as a new power source. When the Zetrati finally found the ship on Earth, a devastating attack was launched on Macross Island, which is where we get the Macross from, where the ship was originally found and reconstructed. In the initial onslaught of the SDF 1, lost most of its anti gravity control mechanisms, trying to launch from the surface, relying on conventional thrusters instead. The ship tried to reach orbit and link up with the armed space platforms for heavier firepower, but were thwarted when the Zentradi blew these ships away before they could reach the SDF 1. The ship then returned toward the surface to evade attack. While still in Earth's atmosphere, the crew initiated a space fold to evade the overwhelming enemy, intending to arrive at lunar orbit far from Earth. The result, uh, dun, 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 lost my spot here, was arrival beyond the orbit of Pluto, with the spacefold system itself having completely disappeared in process. The SDF 1 had to rely on its main engines of reflex furnace and heat pile system cluster. Over the course of time, the ship would prove itself in battle on many occasions, until finally being destroyed at the hands of Zor and his battleship. After the last encounter, it was, or it, after the last encounter, it and the remains of the SDF 2 were contaminated with radiation and buried to contain as much as possible. Little did humanity know that the invid flower of life had been aboard the ship all along, the source of protoculture itself. The SDF 1 was able to transform into a humanoid attack mode similar to that of the Veritech fighters. Rules for this are included and showing the differences above, and also listing the weapons if the weapons if the can or cannot be used on either mode. So the author of this has it set up so you can understand what weapons you can use, what weapons you can't use, depending on what mode you're in, because you're going to have about three modes, I believe. All right. The arms of the SDF 1 were originally either two acquired submersible aquatic carrier ships, Prometheus and Daedalus, respectively, and it also meant to dock with the armed class space carriers. I will make stats for these at a later time, which I don't. He made a class for the armed space carriers, but he didn't do the Prometheus and Daedalus that I'm aware of. Uh, Macross Little do many people know that Robotech is actually a clever uh, in, invention of Harmony Gold, taking these unrelated anime series Macross, Southern Cross, and Mospedia, respectively, and carefully editing them to fit together as one long series of related events to tell a much more grand story. Um, so there's other legal stuff behind here, and I'm sure if you're a Robotech slash Macross fan, you've heard all of this for years, and it still kind of bundles things up today, where we keep hearing we're going to have a live action, and then we don't, and we're going to have something, and something falls through. It's a lot of legal mumble jumble in the background between Harmony Gold, the actual owners of some of the franchise for the designs, and other things that go on legally and all that, and it's just a complete mess. So I'm not going to get into any of that. As a fan, and that it is a wonderful masterpiece. In Macross there was no Zor nor Robotech Masters. The SDF-1 was originally a heavily modified, or just plain different, not sure which, inspection force vessel of the um, Marduk, who were split into factions of males called Zentradi and females called um Malatradi. Protoculture was not a power source at all, but it defined something, either early developing human culture or the advanced cultures that came before. Either way, the Zentradi were very much human, same as in Robotech, and aside from everything else destroyed this almost entirely. Whoops, I think I've missed a line here. Um, Aside from Earth, sorry, uh, were all that was left of a once existing, highly advanced empire of humanity spread across the stars. An ancient protoculture war between the inspection forces and everyone else destroyed this almost entirely, save Earth and possibly other remote places in the universe. As time would pass, the inspection force became the Marduk and lost all means of culture, becoming stagnated and cloning themselves to reproduce, and forgetting the ways of technology and how to repair their own technology and ships. Again, much like in the Zetrati from Robotech. In Macross, the battle between the SDF-1 and the Marduk slash Zentradi was the focus of the series. Also, through the SDF-1 was critically damaged at the end of the series. It was not totally destroyed and would one day be repaired to fight a new threat and exist in some form or another in future Macross spin offs in the future. So there are the big differences there, where between how the Japanese write their stories and how we typically have ours in the United States. And then you also have book series in here, so we're not going to get into that. Let's get into the ship, the beautiful ship that it is. Okay, so the SDF-1, the Robotech Defense Force, RDF, Super Dimensional Force Fortress, which is the SDF. Um, this is a multi-purpose battleship. It is capital scale, has a length of 1,210 meters. We have a crew of 800 military personnel and 1,200 uh, extra support personnel or whatever, totaling to about 20,000 personnel. Now, there are passengers on board because when it did the space fold, it inadvertently captured the island of Macross, or at least a good part of it. So we had the city of Macross on the ship that was recovered. So we have 70,000, possibly 100,000 plus passengers. Keep in mind, we have a living city on board this ship. Cargo capacity 150,000 metric tons, possibly more, plus an entire city inside, give or take a ton. So please be a little fluid with this. Consumables 5 years. On stock per on stock perishables with Macross City built inside the ship. Hydroponics were probably established to produce more food and replenish foodstuffs. This is a one of a kind. There is only this one. They did make a SDF2, but however you want to work this. And if we're going to do this as a role playing game, I would say probably just stay with the one, however you want to do it. If you want to fold this into some other franchise, like I always talk about, I'd love to just mash everything in together. Um, you could still have it as a one or maybe a two, kind of like Battlestar Galactica, where it's a fleet trying to find a new home, something like that. However you want to do it. Okay, hyperdrive. The GM should choose which way that you want to do this. Now, you could have instantaneous space fold system, which then disappears after the first use, or option two, this it's a times one hyperdrive which disappeared after the first use. Either way, it is no longer there, and it has to go at our snail's pace here. It does have a nav computer, but unfortunately, we don't have the faster than light travel. Maneuverability, we have a 3D battleship mode, 2D attack mode. Let's see, space is 7 in battleship mode and 5 in attack mode. Atmosphere, we can go 1,000 kilometers an hour in battleship mode and 850 kilometers an hour in attack mode. We have an 8D for our hull. Now, when it comes to shields, there are a couple different ways of doing this. We do have a point barrier system, which was how the SDF-1 first kind of performed. You had a couple controllers trying to control the different point barrier systems. Um, you have to, with the point barrier, make a shield skill roll every round of combat to place a pinpoint barrier in the way of the oncoming attack, much like a melee parry skill roll and to block a melee attack. There is there are three pinpoint barrier energy discs, each requiring an operator. This can be stacked for greater strength, 8D for 1 point, 9D for 2, and 10D for all 3 points stacked together. Much the same as how if we have weapons and then we start to fire link them together, we add one extra D. This is doing the same thing. Now, later on, we do get a full barrier system, and this is going to be a 10D all arcs covered. The full barrier has a limitation of overloading when it soaks up too much energy from enemy attack. When a wild die rolls a 1, the full barrier is overloaded. Roll 3d6 for space atmosphere range, and everything in that range suffers 10d capital scale damage, unless they can make it out of the blast radius in time. When an overload happens, use the random roll chart on the main gun to get the shields back up. The writer, the original author of this, has systems in place not to make this too overpowered. I mean, keep in mind we have a very significant hull, and if you did have the full barrier, a 10D is very, uh, very, very respectable, and in some regards, it could almost be considered overpowered. In many regards, really. All right, another option for shields is to make them invulnerable to any attack. The dice given are still high for the advanced technology, yet are given the chance to be overcome, even invulnerable. Both shield types have limitations for their use and can be used against them, and this should not be taken away. So he's trying to have an Achilles heel, something that always has to be overcome, which is always a great mechanic in that. So you don't have players getting too cocky and just whatever's. All right, so our sensors here. Passively, we can scan out to 5 kilometers with a 1D bonus. We can do an active scan out to 10 kilometers with a 3D bonus. We can do an active search out to 20 kilometers with a 4D bonus. Focus is out to 600 meters, and that's a 4D plus 2 bonus. Now, our complement of Destroyed, so we have 36 Excalibur, 24 Gladiator, 72 Radar X, 56 Spartan, and 24 Mac 2. Veritex, we have 200 VF1As, we have 50 VF1Js, 40 VF1S, 6 Armored, and we have 12 VT1Ds. The main gun, Reflex Cannon. Now this is a forward arc, has a crew of 1 to fire. The gun is fired from the bridge by the Chief Tactical Officer or whoever takes the controls and makes the combat roll. Fire control is 0D. Space range, I'm not worried about all this stuff. This is, typically when I'm doing this, and I've said this before, when I'm doing the combat, I like to just keep things simple. You think of the old Final Fantasy, you have the enemy on one side, you're on the other side, just fighting it out that way. You know what? It keeps everything simple. If you want to get into all the high end technical stuff, all the different covers and the this and the that, uh, it takes more time, and I don't get the guys here very often, so I try to speed all that stuff up for just ease of play. So that's where I come from. But if you want to put all the different ranges, so they're out of range, in range, whatever, that's all up to you, and I'm not going to bash anyone. I don't get a lot of time, so I just want to have the guys here and let's just have some fun. So, uh, damage absolutely destroys everything in its path of fire, everything within the beam's length and width. Another option is to give it a die code, but this would be around 10D, probably more, Death Star scale. Now it has a rate of fire of 1 every 10 minutes, so about 120 combat rounds. That's its Achilles heel. It does a massive amount of damage, but it can only be used so much. All right. Roll one of the following table for each shot to follow um, a D100 percentile or D6 if one wants to stay fully in the D6 system. We have a 6 would be energized and ready to fire. A 4 to 5 requires an additional 10 minutes. 2 to 3 requires an additional 20 minutes, and 1 will not fire, needs 24 hours to recharge. Notes if the pinpoint barrier, full barrier, is engaged, the main gun cannot fire. Can only fire in you can only fire in attack. Um, so you got to use one or the other. Okay, 8 reflex, robot technology, guided converging mode energy beam cannons. We have 2 in the front, 2 in the right, 2 in the left, 2 in the rear. Now these are Death Star scale. Takes a crew of 5. Fire control is 1D, and it is 4D damage. Now keep in mind this is also Death Star scale, so if you're attacking a Star Destroyer, that 4D becomes 6D. But your fire control is going to be non-existent, because remember you lose 2D when you're trying to shoot at it, because that's that plus and minus here. Rate of fire 1 or 4 every 3 rounds. So I would say probably just fire once. All right, we have reflex ultra high speed electromagnetic rail cannons. Now these are turreted. We have fire control is 2D. This is also capital scale. So um, if you're going up against a Star Destroyer or something like that size, it's going to be 12D damage. And we have a rate of fire of 3 or 8 every 3 rounds. I'd probably just keep it 3 myself, just trying to keep it nice and simple. Secondary armaments, we have 12 long range missile launchers, 4 in the front, 3 in the right, 3 in the left, and 2 in the rear. Fire control is 3D. Now, again, this is capital scale. All right, damage varies according to the warhead type. see the missile chart below. So there is a missile chart, or whatever posted on the site. Rate of fire for each can fire volleys of 2, 4, 6, or 8. Requires 6 combat rounds to reload. Okay, so going through, we have 48 medium range missile launchers. Um, I'm we have 12 in each arc. Fire control is 3D, and again, depending on what missiles are being shot, it's the same as before. We have 48 dual barrel 40 centimeter autocannons, 12 in each arc, 3D for fire control. Um, Damage is 8D, 7D if one shell is fired from one barrel. Weapon counts as fire linked. So I would probably keep it at 8D. Rate of fire 4. 4 volleys per cannon requires 6 combat rounds to reload. You know, you could fire 12 rounds at something every, or 12 times, and just consider it as one arc and just keep going. I don't see a problem with that. All right. 48 high powered laser cannons. Again, it's 12 in each arc. Starfighter scale. So this is your anti starfighter weaponry. Fire control is 4D, damage is 5D. And again, we have a rate of fire of 4. We do have attack mode. So punches. We can either take the Daedalus or the Prometheus, and we can actually punch into something. Okay. Damage varies with whatever ship is docked as its arms. The Daedalus Prometheus vessels assume they have a 5D hull and use this for damage. You can also use the uh, pinpoint barrier to add damage dice to the attack, no matter what kind of ship is used as the arm. This adds 8D for one energy disc plus 1D per extra disc, up to a total of 10D to the attack damage dice. Unless in an striking an important part of another ship, this will not destroy the enemy vessel, but will bust a hole inside its hull. Once inside, the hull of the arm has a hatch they can open, which was done very much in the cartoon. It can open in the front, which was the right arm, which did. It could have its destroids launch all missiles and all other weapons directly inside the enemy ship, causing much damage internally, which would probably have less resistance than the outer hull, either in lowering scale or die code or both. This usually winds up with total destruction of the enemy vessel. Note, this was an emergency maneuver used when an attempted ambush on the Zentradi ship with the main gun. When the main gun failed and could not fire, this improved or improvised attack succeeded more than anyone thought was possible and was used again later. The rate of fire, oh, come on, really? Make the first one count. Okay. And that's just as a note for the GM, for your referee, game master, whatever. Just let them have fun and make it count. Um, that's what we have here. Now there is a missile listing somewhere. I don't have it on this one. I'm sure that we're going to find it on one of the others. We're going to hit what they have here on rpggamer.org. I think they have 5 listings of stuff here altogether. They have the ARM, which is what we will hit tomorrow, and we're going to have fun with it for the week as we get into our Christmas week. And if you only watch one of them and you don't watch any of the others, I do wish you a Merry Christmas. As always, thank you for stopping by. It's wonderful having you here. Hope you have a wonderful day, and we will see you in the next video.